Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and today I want to talk a little bit about the 5 love languages and the impact or the interconnectedness between love languages and attachment styles. So for those of you who are not familiar with love languages, there is a man named Dr. Gary Chapman who sort of developed this theory or this idea that we all have different love languages or languages that we communicate love through. And so your love language or love languages, because sometimes we'll sort of have we'll relate in all different love languages, like we'll sort of have all of these love languages apparent in how we give and receive love, yet we will tend to have a dominant love language or primary and secondary love languages that are dominant. And if we are not, with a partner who's supporting this love language, then we can feel unloved or triggered, or it'll sort of trigger some of the core attachment style wounds that we each have according to our attachment style itself. So as an example, there's actually I'll go through the love languages first, and then we'll go through the examples and explain everything. So the 5 love languages themselves are quality time. So doing things together, spending time together, talking, having deep conversations, doing activities, sports, going to the movies, all that kind of stuff. So quality time. Words of affirmation. So compliments, affirming your partner. Thank you, I love you, you look beautiful, you look handsome, you're so smart, I appreciate you, you're a great partner, husband, wife, father, all that kind of stuff. Mother. So words of affirmation. Gifts, so that's pretty self-explanatory, picking up gifts or buying somebody a gift or all that kind of stuff. Physical touch, so the actual touching, holding hands, connecting. This could also be sex, this could be cuddling, this could be hugging, kissing, all that kind of stuff. And acts of service, so doing things for your partner. So this could be taking them to the airport, cooking dinner for them, cleaning the house, tidying their office space, whatever it is, sort of the act of doing things for somebody. And so just to review those again, so you've got physical touch, quality time, they're not in any particular order, physical touch, quality time, acts of service, gifts, and words of affirmation. Now, what I've found in working with so many people over the years is that different attachment styles tend to almost always have one love language that's either primary or secondary to each. So I want to go through what these are. And then I want to go through what the impact is of not being aware of your partner's love language, and even beyond that, of accidentally triggering the opposite of your partner's love language. So that will make sense in a moment. So let's start with the dismissive avoidant. The dismissive avoidant, as you can imagine, almost always has a love language on words of affirmation. This is almost always primary or at least secondary. I don't think in all of the people I've seen over the years, which is a lot of people, I don't think that I have ever seen a dismissive avoidant not have a love language on words of affirmation. So, you imagine, and let me make one other key point in here. The man who developed this, so Dr. Gary Chapman, I think I said this earlier, but he compared having different love languages to actually speaking different languages. So it's like this huge block and this huge barrier in the relationship if you're not speaking your partner's friggin' love language. So, you can imagine if, let's say you're an anxious attachment style person and you are with a dismissive avoidant and you don't know that they have a love language on words of affirmation. And in fact, when you get triggered, you become critical or you criticize. What happens? Well, not only do you trigger your partner in terms of their attachment style wounds and their core subconscious beliefs, but you also, as a result of that experience, you also, sort of take from them this perception of what love is. It's like you're unloving them in a way. You're taking from their love tank when you criticize, because not only are you speaking against their love language in a way, but you're also triggering their core wounds. So when we don't know what our partner's love language is, and we don't know what ours are, it can become really challenging, and it can sort of act as this block here. So we want to be clear about these things if we don't already know them. So dismissive avoidance almost always have a love language on words of affirmation. Fearful avoidance almost always have a love language on quality time. So, you know, that deep conversation, that deep connection, that sort of holding space for one another, that's super, super important to the fearful avoidant. And they tend to be quite chatty when they feel connected to somebody. And, you know, it sort of links all into our attachment style core wounds, because the fearful avoidant usually comes from some form of enmeshment trauma. And so they have a deep desire to feel like heard and understood and connected to. So they generally really like that quality time in terms of conversation. And the anxious attachment style, they tend to almost always have a love language on physical touch. And also quality time can be quite important to this attachment style, but physical touch, I find, tends to be the primary one more often. And it's that connection, that physical, you know, being together. And so that tends to be super important for that attachment style. So those are the core love languages that sort of are associated with each attachment style. And how do you find out what yours are, or how do you find out what your partner's is? So, you know, two really good questions to ask yourself in this case are, you know, how do I feel the most loved? So through those 5 love languages, what makes me feel the most loved? When I have quality time with my partner, when I receive gifts from my partner, when my partner is being really touchy-feely and connecting to me that way, or if I'm having sex with my partner more often, you know, it can be any of that stuff. Which ones did I not say? Through acts of service, if somebody does something for me, or if somebody compliments or affirms me. And so ask, like, what makes me feel the most loved? And if you're still struggling, because that can be a tough question, you can ask yourself, like, if I could only have 1 or 2 of those 5 characteristics present in my relationship, which ones would I choose at the cost of all others? Okay, so you can order them that way. And then you can also notice that, because you can have love language in terms of receiving, but you can have a natural love language just according to childhood patterns you perceived. You can have a natural love language that you give through that may not always be the one that you receive through. I know in Gary Chapman's work, he talks a little bit about how it tends to be the same way. But what I notice over time is that a lot of people will have a love language they give more often through that feels more comfortable to them, but they receive something that's different than that love language they express the most through. So just as an example to make that clear, I'll use a personal example. So I have my highest love language is quality time. And, but I tend to, because I had parents who were really affirming, a little bit crazy, you know, on the other side of that sometimes with their criticism, but also quite affirming. So it comes naturally for me to give a lot through words of affirmation, even though when I'm giving words of affirmation, that's not anywhere near as important to me as quality time, and even physical touch. So just to sort of make that super clear. So ask yourself, what makes me feel the most loved when I give, and what makes me feel the most loved when I receive? And then, you know, boil it down to those top 2, because that's super important. And then either ask your partner. I mean, you know, you can guess, but I would always say ask, go directly to the horse's mouth, like have the conversation. These are important conversations to be having in your relationships, period. So ask your partner and notice, like, when do they tend to light up or respond the most? You know, is it when you compliment them? Is it when you hold their hand? They, you know, seemingly become, you know, suddenly really warm and connecting, and more expressive of their love and connection. Do they always want to spend more quality time with you and sit down and have conversations that are more deep and meaningful? Like, what do you notice about them? Or ask the question so that you can have these conversations together. And then make the commitment to speaking in each other's love language. Make the conscious commitment to checking in with each other's love language once a day, or you know, twice a week, 3 times a week, because this is such an important part of a lasting relationship, is that we feel that our needs are being met for how we are giving love and perceiving that we are receiving love. So quite simple, straight to the point. And the 3 biggest parts that have an impact on our relationship at all times are our attachment styles, our love languages, and our needs. okay? And under attachment styles, I'm including core wounds in that piece, but our needs, our basic needs and the strategies we use to meet them. So I'm going to make a longer set of videos about our basic needs and how we get our needs met in relationships and how this sort of dynamic works. But this is a really important thing to tune into for now. So thank you so much for watching. If you're getting a lot of value out of these videos, please like them, share them, subscribe to our channel, and please feel free to visit www.personaldevelopmentschool.com for any further questions. Thank you.